When did you understand your partner was unsafe for your kids? Okay, listen. I need to tell you about the night my entire world shattered. Imagine this. It's 2:47 in the morning, a Thursday. I find my 8-year-old daughter, Lily, unconscious in the bathtub, water still running. And my wife, Simone, is standing there in the doorway, silk robe, glass of wine in hand, watching me scream Lily's name as I pull her limp body from the water. But the thing that truly turned my blood to ice? It wasn't the horror of the situation. It was the look on Simone's face. Not shock. Not terror. Just annoyance. Like I'd interrupted her. In that moment, with my daughter's blue lips against my hands as I started CPR, I knew. The woman I'd married 6 months ago had just tried to kill my child. My name is Graham Foster, and this is the story of the 18 months that absolutely destroyed and then painstakingly rebuilt my entire life. I'd been a single dad for 3 years. My ex-wife, Victoria, Lily and Connor's mom, had died from breast cancer when Lily was 5 and Connor was 7. Those 3 years were brutal, honestly. Learning to braid hair, pack lunches, manage bedtime routines all alone, while working as a mechanical engineer at an aerospace company. My mom helped when she could, but she lived 2 hours away and had her own health issues. I was exhausted. I was lonely. And I was desperate for my kids to have a complete family again. That desperation? It made me vulnerable to Simone in ways I didn't even recognize until it was almost too late. I met her at a company networking event. She was a pharmaceutical sales rep, beautiful, confident, and she seemed genuinely interested in my kids when I talked about them. We dated for 8 months before I introduced her to Lily and Connor, and she was perfect with them at first. Patient, fun, always bringing them small gifts, asking about their interests. Connor, who was 10 by then, loved that she knew about video games. Lily adored that Simone would paint her nails and do her makeup. 6 months after meeting the kids, Simone and I got married in a small ceremony. My family, they had reservations. My mom, bless her heart, said she couldn't quite put her finger on it, but something felt off about how quickly Simone wanted to move the relationship forward. I dismissed her concerns as overprotectiveness. I just wanted my new happy family. The problem started small. So small I told myself I was imagining things. I felt guilty, you know? Guilty about remarrying, about potentially replacing Victoria in my kids' lives. Lily would complain about stomach aches after eating meals Simone prepared, but only when I wasn't home. When I'd ask Simone about it, she'd sigh and explain that Lily was testing boundaries, trying to get attention, being difficult about food she didn't like. And it made sense, right? Kids do act out when family dynamics change. Then Connor started having trouble sleeping. He'd say he had nightmares about drowning, about being trapped in small spaces. I scheduled him for therapy with Dr. Patricia Okonkwo, a child psychologist. After 3 sessions, Dr. Okonkwo said Connor seemed to be processing his mother's death in delayed waves, which was developmentally normal. She recommended weekly therapy. Simone was so supportive. She'd drive Connor to appointments when I had to work late, taking notes on the therapist's suggestions. She really seemed like the perfect stepmother. But then these small things started adding up in ways that made my stomach twist. I'd find bruises on Lily's arms that she couldn't explain. And when I'd ask Simone about them, she'd say Lily was clumsy, always bumping into things, just hadn't mentioned it. Connor started having what looked like allergic reactions, hives, swollen lips, difficulty breathing, that would mysteriously appear when I was at work but be gone by the time I got home. Simone would tell me she'd given him Benadryl and he was fine, just probably ate something at school. I started keeping a mental list of these incidents, not because I suspected anything specific, just because something felt profoundly wrong in a way I couldn't articulate. My engineering brain wanted data, patterns, evidence. But every time I tried to discuss my concerns with Simone, she'd get emotional, saying I didn't trust her, that she was trying her best with kids who weren't biologically hers, that maybe I wasn't ready to move on from Victoria. The guilt would swallow me whole and I'd apologize, promise to be more supportive. The first real red flag, the one I couldn't rationalize away, came 4 months into our marriage. I came home early from work one afternoon because a client meeting had been canceled. As I walked in through the garage, I heard Lily crying upstairs. Not normal kid crying. This was desperate, terrified sobbing that makes your heart stop. I took the stairs 3 at a time and burst into her room to find her locked in her closet. The lock was on the outside, a sliding bolt I'd never seen before. When I got her out, she was hysterical, saying Simone had put her there because she'd spilled juice on the carpet. She'd been in the dark closet for over an hour. My hands were shaking as I held Lily. And when Simone came home 20 minutes later carrying grocery bags, she looked genuinely surprised. She explained that she'd told Lily to sit in her room and think about being more careful. But Lily must have shut herself in the closet by accident. Kids do that sometimes, she said, when they want attention or to make the step-parent look bad. And God help me. Part of me wanted to believe her because the alternative, that my wife had deliberately locked my daughter in a closet, was too horrible to contemplate. I took Lily to our pediatrician, Dr. Raymond Kim, the next day, telling him about the closet incident and asking if this was normal behavior for an 8-year-old. Dr. Kim had known Lily since birth, had helped us through Victoria's illness and death. He examined Lily carefully, asked her gentle questions about home life, and then pulled me aside. He said Lily seemed anxious and more withdrawn than he'd seen before, but she wasn't showing signs of physical abuse. The closet incident was concerning, but not necessarily evidence of danger, if it was truly an accident. He recommended family therapy and suggested I pay closer attention to interactions between Lily and Simone. I left his office feeling like I was going crazy, like I was seeing threats that didn't exist. That night, I installed a nanny cam in the living room, hidden in a bookshelf, telling myself I was being paranoid but needing to know for sure. The footage from that first week changed everything. I watched it on my laptop in my car during lunch breaks, not wanting Simone to know I was reviewing it. Most of it was mundane. Kids doing homework, Simone on her phone, normal afternoon routine. But then I saw a clip from Wednesday afternoon that made my blood run cold. Connor asked for a snack and Simone went to the kitchen to make him a sandwich. The camera angle didn't show the kitchen, but I could see her return with a peanut butter sandwich. Connor was severely allergic to peanuts. Had an EpiPen. Wore a medical alert bracelet. Simone knew this. We discussed it extensively before marriage because it was life-threatening. I watched Connor take a bite. Watched his face change as he realized what he was eating. Watched him run to the bathroom while Simone stood there doing nothing. The camera showed him coming back out 15 minutes later, having made himself throw up, his face red and swollen. Simone made him clean the bathroom before giving him actual food. I confronted her that night after the kids went to bed, my hands shaking as I held my laptop. I played the clip, watched her face as she saw herself give Connor peanut butter. Her expression didn't change. She didn't apologize or look shocked. She just sighed and said Connor had been asking for peanut butter all week, that she'd forgotten about the allergy because he was so insistent. That it was an honest mistake. I asked why she hadn't called 911 or used his EpiPen when he started reacting. She said she'd panicked, frozen up, didn't know what to do in the moment. Her explanation was reasonable on the surface, but something in her eyes was flat, empty. I told her we needed to have a serious conversation about safety protocols, and she agreed, apologized, promised to be more careful. I wanted to believe it was really just a mistake. Wanted to believe I hadn't married someone who would deliberately harm my children. The next incident happened 2 weeks later. I woke up at 2:30 a.m. to use the bathroom and noticed Lily's bedroom door was open. I walked down the hall and found her bed empty. Panic hit immediately. Where was my daughter in the middle of the night? I searched the whole house, increasingly frantic, before finding her in the garage. She was sitting in my car, which was still running, carbon monoxide filling the enclosed space. I grabbed her and pulled her outside, both of us coughing, my heart hammering so hard I thought I'd pass out. Lily was drowsy, confused, saying Simone had told her to go sit in the car and wait for me, that we were going on a surprise trip. When I confronted Simone, who'd apparently slept through all of this, she was horrified. She said she'd been having vivid dreams, and must have been sleepwalking, that she had no memory of telling Lily anything. She cried, saying she was terrified she was capable of doing things in her sleep without knowing, that she'd see a doctor immediately. I took Lily to the emergency room that night, where Dr. Angela Morrison, the attending physician, examined her for carbon monoxide poisoning. Lily's levels were elevated but not critical. Another 10 minutes in that garage and she would have been in serious danger. Dr. Morrison asked careful questions about how Lily ended up in a running car in a closed garage. When I explained about Simone possibly sleepwalking, her expression suggested she didn't buy it. She made extensive notes in Lily's file and explained that she was required to file a report with Child Protective Services because the circumstances were suspicious. I felt relieved and terrified at the same time. Relieved that someone else saw what I was seeing, terrified about what it meant for my kids' safety. The CPS caseworker showed up at our house 3 days later. Her name was Jolene Baptiste, a woman in her 40s with 20 years of experience investigating child welfare cases. She interviewed me, Simone, and both kids separately, took extensive notes, and examined the house for safety hazards. She reviewed Lily's medical records, Connor's therapy notes, and the ER report from the carbon monoxide incident. After 4 hours, she sat with me and Simone at our kitchen table and explained her preliminary findings. There were concerning patterns, multiple injuries, multiple incidents where the children were in danger while in Simone's care, multiple explanations that seemed plausible individually but troubling collectively. However, none of the individual incidents met the threshold for removing the children or filing criminal charges. She placed us under a safety plan, requiring that Simone never be alone with the kids, that my mom or another family member supervise whenever I couldn't be home. Jolene would be conducting follow-up visits monthly for the next 6 months. Simone was furious after Jolene left. She paced around the kitchen, her face red, saying I'd humiliated her by allowing CPS into our home, that I was poisoning the investigators against her, that she was trying her best but everyone was against her. She accused me of still being in love with Victoria, of wanting to find reasons to get rid of her. I tried to explain that I just wanted to keep the kids safe, but she wasn't hearing it. That night, she slept in the guest room. And the next morning, I found she'd called in sick to work and spent the day researching divorce attorneys. When I came home, she handed me papers for legal separation, saying if I couldn't trust her, we shouldn't be married. Part of me felt relieved. Part of me felt like I'd failed my kids by bringing this person into our lives in the first place. But then Simone didn't leave. She said she'd been too hasty, that she loved our family, that she wanted to work on things in therapy. She booked us couples counseling with Dr. Marcus Ellington, a marriage therapist who specialized in blended families. We went twice a week for a month talking about trust, communication, and the challenges of step-parenting. Simone was articulate and emotional in these sessions, talking about how hard it was to parent kids who'd lost their mother, who saw her as a replacement rather than a partner. Dr. Ellington seemed sympathetic to her position, suggesting I was being hypervigilant because of lingering grief and overprotectiveness. He recommended I work on trusting Simone's intentions, even when outcomes weren't perfect. I tried. God, I tried. I wanted to believe my wife wasn't a danger to my children. But the nanny cam footage kept showing troubling things. Small cruelties that added up. Simone ignoring Connor when he asked for help with homework, then yelling at him when his grades dropped. Simone forgetting to give Lily her lunch money, then telling her she needed to learn responsibility. Simone leaving them alone for hours while she went shopping or to the gym, despite the CPS safety plan. I started documenting everything. Screenshots of footage, notes in a password-protected document. Dates, times, specific incidents. My mom had moved in temporarily to help supervise and she started noticing things too. How Simone's behavior changed completely when I came home, becoming warm and attentive with the kids. How she'd whisper things to them that made them flinch. My mom started her own documentation, writing down everything she witnessed. The breaking point came on that Thursday night when I found Lily in the bathtub. After I got her breathing again through CPR, after the ambulance arrived and took her to the hospital, after the doctors confirmed she'd nearly drowned, I sat in the hospital waiting room at 4:30 a.m. and called Detective Ramona Ellis with the local police department. She specialized in crimes against children and had 15 years of experience. I told her everything. Every incident. Every near miss. Every piece of footage I had. She listened without interrupting. And when I finished, she said she'd need to see all my evidence. We met at the police station that morning while Lily was still in the hospital under observation. I brought my laptop with all the nanny cam footage, my documentation file, my mom's notes, medical records from Dr. Kim and Dr. Morrison, therapy notes from Dr. Okonkwo. Detective Ellis spent 6 hours reviewing everything while I sat in an uncomfortable chair drinking terrible coffee. When she finally looked up, her expression was grim. She explained that what I documented was a pattern of behavior consistent with something called caregiver-induced illness, or factitious disorder imposed on another. Essentially, Simone had been systematically creating dangerous situations for my kids, likely for attention, sympathy, or control. Each individual incident could be explained away, but collectively they showed clear intent. The peanut butter with a known severe allergy wasn't an accident. The carbon monoxide in the garage wasn't sleepwalking. The bathtub drowning wasn't Lily falling asleep. These were deliberate attempts to harm my children while maintaining plausible deniability. Detective Ellis said she'd be opening a criminal investigation and recommended I file for emergency custody modification immediately, getting a restraining order that prevented Simone from having any contact with the kids. I hired attorney Devin Clark, a family law specialist. That same afternoon he reviewed all my evidence and filed for emergency custody and a protective order within 2 hours. The hearing was scheduled for the next morning, Friday, at 9 a.m. in family court. Devin explained that getting a restraining order against a step-parent was unusual, but doable given the evidence. We'd need to prove that Simone posed an immediate threat, which meant presenting the nanny cam footage, medical records, and CPS reports to a judge. That night, I stayed at the hospital with Lily while my mom stayed with Connor at our house. I didn't tell Simone where we were. She called 15 times, left voicemails asking where everyone was, saying she was worried, saying we needed to talk. I didn't respond. The judge at the emergency hearing was Patricia Woodbridge, a family court judge with 30 years on the bench who specialized in child welfare cases. Devin presented our evidence methodically. The nanny cam footage showing the peanut butter incident, the ER reports from the carbon monoxide poisoning, the near drowning that had just occurred. He called Detective Ellis as a witness, who testified about the pattern she'd identified in her investigation. He called Jolene Baptiste from CPS, who testified about her concerns during her home visits. He called Dr. Morrison from the ER, who explained the statistical improbability of a child having so many dangerous incidents in such a short time frame unless someone was deliberately creating them. Simone's attorney tried to argue that these were isolated accidents being weaponized by a paranoid father, but the evidence was overwhelming. Judge Woodbridge granted the emergency protective order, prohibiting Simone from coming within 500 feet of me or the kids, and gave me temporary sole custody pending a full hearing in 30 days. Simone had to move out of our house that day. I had police escort her while she packed her belongings, and she was calm throughout. Eerily calm. She didn't cry or argue. She just packed methodically, loaded her car, and drove away. The officer who supervised told me her demeanor was concerning. People who were genuinely being wrongly accused showed emotion, anger, hurt. Simone showed nothing. I changed all the locks that afternoon and installed additional cameras inside and outside the house. My mom moved in permanently to help with the kids while I dealt with the legal proceedings. Connor and Lily were struggling. Connor having nightmares worse than before. Lily clingy and anxious. Both of them processing that their stepmother had been trying to hurt them. Over the next 2 weeks, Detective Ellis's investigation expanded. She obtained a search warrant for Simone's phone and computer records, finding searches for things like, how much peanut butter causes anaphylaxis, symptoms of carbon monoxide poisoning, how long can a child hold breath underwater. She found Simone had been active on several online forums for people who felt victimized by stepchildren, communities that encouraged viewing children as obstacles to be overcome. Most chillingly, she found draft life insurance policies Simone had been researching for both kids. Policies that would pay out to her as stepmother. She'd never actually purchased them, but the fact that she'd been researching them showed financial motive alongside whatever psychological gratification she got from harming the kids. The district attorney, Lawrence Kendrick, reviewed Detective Ellis's findings and filed criminal charges against Simone 2 weeks after the protective order. She was charged with 2 counts of attempted murder, multiple counts of child endangerment, and 1 count of aggravated assault. The bail was set at $500,000, which she couldn't afford, so she remained in custody awaiting trial. The local news picked up the story, pharmaceutical sales rep charged with attempting to kill stepchildren. And suddenly our lives were public. Reporters camped outside our house, called my work, tried to interview neighbors. I had to pull the kids from their school temporarily and enroll them in a different district to avoid the media attention. The invasion of privacy was horrible. But part of me was relieved that the truth was finally public, that Simone couldn't hide behind explanations anymore. The preliminary hearing was 6 weeks later, and I had to testify about finding Lily in the bathtub, about the patterns I'd noticed, about the nanny cam footage. Simone sat at the defense table looking small and sad, wearing a conservative dress and minimal makeup, the picture of a wrongfully accused woman. Her attorney tried to paint me as a controlling, paranoid husband who'd never accepted Simone as his children's stepmother, who'd manufactured evidence through selective editing and false accusations. But the prosecution had too much documentation. Medical experts, forensic analysis of the nanny cam footage showing it hadn't been edited, testimony from Dr. Okonkwo about the pattern of escalating danger Connor described in therapy. The judge found probable cause for trial on all charges. While waiting for trial, I worked with Dr. Okonkwo to help the kids process what had happened. Connor, who was 11 now, was angry. Angry at Simone. Angry at me for bringing her into their lives. Angry at himself for not recognizing sooner what was happening. Lily, just 8, was more confused than angry. She asked repeatedly why Simone had tried to hurt her if she was supposed to love her. I didn't have good answers. Dr. Okonkwo explained that Simone likely had a severe personality disorder, that she probably couldn't feel empathy the way most people did, that she'd seen the kids as obstacles or objects rather than humans worthy of care. These explanations felt inadequate, but they were all we had. The trial started 4 months after the charges were filed. The prosecution called dozens of witnesses: doctors, therapists, CPS workers, police, even my mom. They played the nanny cam footage in court showing Simone giving Connor peanut butter, showing her ignoring his obvious allergic reaction. They presented expert testimony about caregiver-induced illness, about how perpetrators often seem charming and caring in public while being dangerous in private. The most damaging testimony came from Simone's previous employer, a pharmaceutical company she'd worked for before our company. They terminated her after 3 years when they discovered she'd been stealing sample medications from work, specifically Benadryl, EpiPens, and other allergy medications. She'd been let go quietly without criminal charges. This showed a pattern of interest in allergy medications that predated our relationship. The defense tried to argue that Simone had made mistakes but never intended harm, that she'd been overwhelmed by step-parenting and made poor decisions under stress. They claimed the nanny cam footage was taken out of context, that Simone's internet searches were just research to understand the kids' medical conditions better, that the life insurance inquiries were responsible financial planning. But the jury didn't buy it. The evidence was too consistent, too damning. After 4 days of deliberation, they returned guilty verdicts on both counts of attempted murder, all counts of child endangerment, and the assault charge. Simone showed no emotion when the verdict was read, just stared straight ahead as if she was alone in the courtroom. Sentencing came 2 weeks later. The prosecution recommended 25 years, citing the premeditation, the vulnerability of the victims, and the breach of trust. The defense asked for leniency, claiming Simone had mental health issues that should be treated rather than punished. Judge Woodbridge listened to impact statements from me, from Dr. Okonkwo, from Jolene Baptiste at CPS. Then she sentenced Simone to 30 years in prison with no possibility of parole for 15 years. She noted that Simone had systematically targeted innocent children who were already vulnerable from losing their mother, that she'd used her position of trust to carry out a calculated pattern of abuse, and that she'd shown no remorse or accountability throughout the legal proceedings. Simone was led away in handcuffs, and I felt something release in my chest that I'd been holding tight for months. The aftermath was complicated. The kids needed intensive therapy to process the trauma, not just from Simone's actions, but from the realization that someone they trusted had wanted to hurt them. Connor developed severe anxiety about food, refusing to eat anything he hadn't seen prepared from start to finish. Lily had nightmares about drowning, about being trapped, about people pretending to be nice while planning to hurt her. We worked with Dr. Okonkwo 3 times a week, slowly rebuilding their sense of safety. My mom stayed with us indefinitely, providing the stable female presence the kids needed while they healed. I cut my work hours to part-time for 6 months, prioritizing being present with Connor and Lily. I also had to deal with my own guilt and grief. I'd brought Simone into our lives. I'd married her despite red flags. I'd wanted so badly to give my kids a complete family that I'd ignored warning signs that could have gotten them killed. My therapist, Dr. Howard Wong, helped me work through the guilt. Helped me see that Simone had been skilled at manipulation. That wanting a partner wasn't wrong, even if choosing the wrong person had been. He helped me understand that I'd ultimately protected my kids by documenting everything, by trusting my instincts when they screamed something was wrong, by acting quickly once I had proof. But forgiving myself took longer than I expected. 6 months after the trial, I sold our house. Too many bad memories. Too many rooms where dangerous things had happened. We moved to a smaller place across town. Fresh start for all of us. Connor started playing basketball at his new school, finding community and purpose with his teammates. Lily joined a swim team, which her therapist thought was important, reclaiming the water as something fun rather than frightening. Both kids were making progress, having good days and bad days, slowly learning to trust again. I started dating again eventually, but very cautiously, and I never introduced the kids to anyone I was seeing until I'd known them for at least a year. Trust had become something earned over time rather than given freely. 3 years later, I'm sitting at Connor's middle school graduation, watching him walk across the stage, and I'm thinking about how close we came to this moment never happening. How if I hadn't installed that nanny cam, if I hadn't documented everything, if I hadn't acted quickly when I found Lily in the bathtub, my kids might not be here. Lily is sitting next to me wearing her swim team jacket, whispering comments about how boring the speeches are, being a typical 11-year-old. They're both okay. Not undamaged. Trauma leaves scars, but okay. They're safe. They're healing. And they know their dad will always protect them, even when it means admitting he made terrible mistakes in judgment. The thing about recognizing a partner as a threat is that it often happens slowly, through accumulated small moments, rather than one obvious incident. You rationalize an excuse and give the benefit of the doubt because you want to believe the person you chose to build a life with isn't capable of hurting the people you love most. But eventually the evidence becomes impossible to ignore. And you have to act. Even when it means destroying your marriage, your family structure, your sense of security. I acted, but barely in time. Other parents might not be so lucky. So, if you're watching this and something feels wrong with how your partner treats your kids, even in small ways, document it. Trust your instincts. Err on the side of protecting your children even if it means being wrong, even if people think you're paranoid, because the alternative, being right too late, is something you'll never forgive yourself for. If you made it this far, you deserve to know that Connor and Lily are both thriving now, 5 years after Simone's conviction. Connor just got accepted to a competitive engineering program at his dream university. Lily is considering a career in social work, wanting to help other kids who've been through trauma. They're remarkable humans who survived something that should have destroyed them. And me? I'm still single, still careful, still watching for red flags. But I'm not broken. My kids aren't broken. We're a family that survived. And that's enough. Have you ever had a moment where your instincts screamed something was wrong, even when everyone else tried to convince you otherwise? How did you react? Tell me your story in the comments below.